Good day, everybody. This is Kathleen Osborne from Kathleen's World, and I have in front of me Matt Robinson. He's a reporter and a book writer, and he's freelance. And I've got so many questions for him. It's unbelievable. But first, I want to just ask him a little bit about his early years. What brought him? What brought you, Matt, to writing? To wanting to be a reporter and independent and
Well, my mom and stepfather were both English teachers slash English professors, so grammar was beaten into me at an early age. Wordplay. My mom and I used to do a lot of like song parodies and things of that sort. So just having a facility with words. Originally, I kind of thought everybody had it. It wasn't until I started doing it professionally and other people who were brilliant in other realms were calling on me to help them with their writing did it really seem like something special. But my other passion has always been music, and I worked in radio here in Boston when I was in college, but couldn't get an on-air job after graduation. So I started writing about music, going to concerts every night, and just I was writing for free for the first few years, just building my portfolio. And eventually, I was hired by the Boston Globe and then by Billboard magazine, and that was just a dream, traveling the world interviewing my heroes. And then when the internet came on and a lot of freelancers and new staff got let go, I kind of had to reconfigure. That's when I got my first teaching degree, started teaching writing, but I've always been writing about one thing or another for my entire career, and they really have dovetailed nicely. The writing and the teaching have really fed each other in a lot of useful ways. These days, I think a lot of students don't see the value in writing. So the fact that I've been able to make a living as a writer, I think, kind of gives me a little cachet with my students. So that's been a great advantage.
yeah, I think that that is one of the saddest things that people are not discovering writing. They're not discovering books. It has to be audible. They can't read,
Yeah,
and it's just breaks my heart.
yeah. I've been adjuncting at colleges for the past 10 years, and they're respectable institutions, but what the students come to me with is really frustrating. Just
Hmm.
how little support they've been given, and but we take them from where they are and hopefully move them forward and get them excited about get them confident that they can express themselves. That's really my main goal.
What age did you teach?
I actually started in preschool. I have an early childhood degree. I taught
Oh.
preschool for a while. I just always been fascinated with how the human brain kind of accretes knowledge, and love just being creative and thinking of kind of off the wall ways to share ideas. And then I ended up getting a full-time gig in teaching, in writing, and went back to that for a while. And then a few years ago, I got a second teaching degree to teach high school and college, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And actually now I'm actually teaching at the Norfolk County Sheriff's Office, which is a penal institution the next town over, and that's been
Mhm.
absolutely fascinating. And as I kind of glibly joke to my colleagues, no phones and no parents, so it's a teacher's dream.
It is. It is. Now, I did not tell anybody where you're from. So when we see all of these players, shall we say, behind you, so where are you from?
I'm from Boston.
Boston?
Yeah, wicked piss and all that. Yeah. Yeah, these guys behind me, the short stories that my father had gone to Brown, which is the bear, and I had been going there in Providence, Rhode Island since I was very young, and fell in love with the mascot. Just there was a student, with the big head, and no one knew who they were, and just completely uninhibited, running amok around the campus. And it just seemed like a great gig to the point that people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I would say the brown bear, not knowing that you had to apply to become a student. But it kind of stuck with me that sort of that, and then living in Massachusetts and New England, of course, you're near Harvard, and it's just kind of part of the culture around here. So unfortunately, my dad was diagnosed with dementia, and I realized at that time that people had always been asking me when my first book was going to come out because I'd been freelancing for so long. And I would always say, well, to make a living, I have to write for other people. I can't really take the time to write for myself. But when he was diagnosed, I realized it was time to make the effort. And so I ended up doing this book about, it's just kind of fun, goofy facts about the Ivy League, kind of to show that despite what you may think, they still, put their pants on one leg at a time, as it were. And I think these days people are seeing just how misdirected they can be. But it's really just meant to be kind of fun and interesting. Well, it's trivia. I call it with a Trivya. That and but it was a sad reason to do it. Obviously, my father unfortunately never got to see the final edition, but the research was a blast, and it's been really great sharing it with people. So it's been a gratifying experience overall.
Well, I think it's interesting that you've pulled all the trivia together because trivia is so important. People don't realize how important it is. It's like the sand underneath or the dirt underneath, and on top of that, everything is built, and then it goes in and it's the mortar and the building, and because it gives it personality, gives the effigy, or not effigy, but the building, the whole culture, something that you can almost be tangible with. And because I love trivia.
Yeah, I mean, especially with these schools, because it's just these goofy traditions that set them apart.
Mm-hmm.
And because of their historic nature, a lot of firsts that people may not even think of are from these schools. Like, Harvard is the first incorporated corporation, and the first football game and ESPN Game Day was from Franklin Field in Philadelphia. These things that you really wouldn't think of, especially around the athletics, because most people don't think very much of Ivy League athletics these days. But once in a while, you have that great story that comes from this tradition. So it was when I share it even with alumni, it's great when they have the aha moment of, I didn't know that, and I went to the school at such and such. So that's been a lot of fun to have them share their stories with me. I have a huge file of volume 2 for someday, but I'm working on this one for now.
Well, that brings me to a question I had. What's the most memorable interview you've ever conducted, and why?
Hmm. I mean, I think it's just sort of, I've always enjoyed talking to people whose stories aren't normally shared. So when I was a new journalist, I was interested in food culture, and the celebrity chef thing was kind of just starting, and we had people like here in Boston, Todd English and Ming Tsai, and I knew I couldn't get to them because I was a small fish. So I started a column where I interviewed the sous chef, the coat check, the bouncer, the barback, the head waiter, the people whose stories hadn't been told. And they literally would say, chef's not here. And I'd be like, no, 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 I'm calling to talk to you. And the stories were just so authentic and untouched that those were the ones that I really loved. And of course, as I mentioned before, I was able to interview a lot of my musical heroes, which was always a thrill. But in terms of the most rewarding stories, it was the ones where, when someone asks, "Wow, I've never been asked that before," then I know I'm onto something. And I do always try to have that kind of out of left field question to just kind of freshen up the interview.
That's that's really important too. If there was somebody that you had never had an opportunity to interview, who would that be?
My white whale has always been Steve Martin. Just his wit, his intellect, the way that I just watched that great 2-part documentary about him recently, and just the struggle of his early years that people really don't know much about, but then how he's been able to be so facile and successful in so many different fields.
Mm-hmm.
That's not that I'm comparing myself, but that's what I strive to do with my writing and my teaching, and now with my radio and TV shows, and just really being able to build an audience and be taken seriously in multiple fields and realms. And I've just always just been a fan of his comedy. So that's the one I always go for. But haven't had the chance yet. We've been in the same room a couple times, but I haven't gotten the access yet.
Ooh, that's important. Breathing the same air.
Yeah, yeah.
um, do you think your experience as a journalist has influenced your teaching methods?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in addition to, I would hope my students taking me more seriously because writing, they can see writing can be a career and a path. Just having that real world experience and being able to reminisce and even, I mean, I'm very open about the mistakes I've made, the failures I've had, and I just try to be very authentic with my students and make it real for them. Because, for example, I was once teaching at a school that was basically had an undergraduate business focus, and I had a student who came to me and said, I don't know why I'm in the intro writing class, because I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to invent something and then hire people to write for me. So what do I need it for? And I said, well, your first assignment is a business plan. And he's like, oh, just, students just
Uh-huh.
don't seem, they don't, I tell them, as long as your grandparents are still in charge of the world, you probably will have to write a business letter at some point that's not tweeted or X
Mm-hmm.
or whatever you call it these days. So, again, so just having them see the value in it and being able to share the real life stories of the great people I've met and the adventures I've been able to go on because of my writing, I think is different than if I'd just been an academic who came out of a PhD program and went into teaching from that angle.
I think one of the things that drew me to you was your authenticity.
Thank you.
Um, the
What I hope so.
We just finished a book, The Transcendent Authors, that I'm a founder of, and it was called Deceit. And it was because what can you trust? What There's nothing out there to trust.
Yeah.
So it's incredible to meet somebody who is a journalist, who is in the public eye, who is on TV, who's doing all of this stuff, and you're authentic. That that needs to be a pat on the back for you, an applause, because it's a rarity.
Well, it doesn't pay. You
No,
know, there,
it doesn't. I know it
yeah,
doesn't
I mean,
pay.
that is the hard part. I've been offered many opportunities to, I mean, advertorial type stuff where it's sell the ad first, and I'm not into it. I just,
Mhm.
I mean, I started reviewing bands in my early career. If they send you a T-shirt and a CD and free tickets, you're not going to say anything too bad about them. But, I really never tried to give them blessing and curse. I would just say, this is what they are. If you go to the
Mhm.
band, if like, for example, excuse me, I grew up with a jazz background, so I was writing about jazz in the rock zines around Boston, and so basically I had to be like, if you like Dave Matthews, you might like Chet Baker, or if you like, Jamiroquai, you might like,
Mhm.
Thelonious Monk, and just not really saying good or bad, just this is something you might want to look into, and it's up to you from there. So I think that's allowed me to kind of maintain that authenticity in a world where it's very tempting to just jump in to follow the money, as it were. And I've done well by doing good, so that's been it's taken a while, but it's turned out okay.
I think that's one of the parts of authenticity, of being honest and being true to yourself and true to whoever you're dealing with, is it does take longer. You have to be a little bit more selective who you're dealing with. Um, it just is fact of life because everybody seems to want something for nothing and
Yeah,
they want it their way.
yeah.
Um, they don't want to listen to anything else. So I wanted to ask you if you had some new people right before you, standing right there before you, that are aspiring writers, what would be the top thing that you would tell them to work at or do or um, exercise in their writing?
But,
What would you?
the first thing when people say, my son or daughter wants to be a journalist, what do you recommend? I usually say at this point, it's a great hobby. It has been a struggle. It has been really a difficult as a career. But again, the reward in the heart and in the soul, maybe not in the wallet. If you can live on that, then it's something. But um, so many of my students today, they're like, well, I have a blog, so I'm published. Being published isn't a big deal. Like, well, it's the tree in the forest. If you're published and no one reads you, I mean, journaling is wonderful. And, if that's one step beyond your diary, then great. But um, I think just, like you said, staying true to your voice, being consistent so that people know what they're going to get. I mean, I have a lot of readers who, tell me that they followed me from publication to publication because there's something to my style that it permeates across the board. So, and it's easier that way because I these days I write about so many different topics that if I was trying to, have a pen name for every single publication, I'd lose track. So,
Mhm.
just really just I think consistency, um, admitting what you don't know. I say to my college students even that, there are certain parts of grammar, especially with English being such a fluid language, that I just try to avoid so I don't do it wrong. And let's learn together. And I teach because I still want to learn things. So again, doesn't always serve me to the best to try to be honest and authentic, but I can live with myself and I found enough people who get it and appreciate it that I've been able to cobble a life together, as it were.
I loved what you said about being honest with your students, and because not every teacher knows everything. They teach. I At least I'm like you. I teach because I want to learn, and you can't learn unless you have a student. And sometimes you are the only student, but it's always fun when there's somebody else in the class beside you.
That's nice.
Um, would you say it 3 times how somebody could get hold of you? Since I don't
Other
have it set up to where you could write on the screen.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, but the best way is just Matt, and the website for the book is probably the easiest one. Matt at lionstigersbulldogs.com. I do get a lot of emails, so I guess put Kathleen sent me in the subject just so if I don't recognize you. I'm also on LinkedIn and Alignable and all those things, but one of the other big tips I give to aspiring writers is, just get out there. If you want to write about music, I mean, I went to 3 or 4 shows a night, 4 or 5 nights a week.
Oh my.
You know, just they all the clubs were nearby each other, and I would just make sure I'd be seen, introduce myself to the other writers in the room, get to know the bands, get to know the doormen and the booking agents, and just I had business cards since day one, and just really be a presence so you're taken seriously. And the other big tip I found is be willing to go a little off your chosen route. Like at first, when I was writing about music, when opportunities for that started to dry up because the zines were going out of business and all that happening, I a lot of the venues that I'd been going to had restaurants. So I would review dinner and then the
Mhm.
band. And now I'm actually talking about food on iHeartRadio internationally. So, be willing to be a little flexible, without losing your heart and soul. I mean, like I said, I don't write about music nearly as much as I want to, but I have been able to keep those relationships strong and find other ways to support those people and interact with those people while expanding my range. Sometimes just for financial necessity, but other
Mhm.
times just because I have more interests and I've been able to use this core skill of writing to explore all these things.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we always need a backup plan. We always need to keep our eyes open because when a door closes, a window opens. You might have to climb over some furniture to get to the window, but
Yep.
you can get to the window.
Yep. Yeah.
I want to thank you for joining me at Kathleen's World today, Matt, and I hope everyone else enjoyed this short little interview too. For more to find out about Matt, go to Alignable, LinkedIn, Matt Robinson, or you can go to Matt.Lions, Tigers, and Bears.
LionsTigersBulldogs.com.
Bulldogs.com.
I couldn't use bears because MGM would have come after me. It had to be licensing was one of the hardest parts of this book, getting permission.
Okay.
So yeah, very careful. Not only is it the Yale mascot, but I had to just go, like I said, a little bit off the side in order to survive.
But it made you unique, so people will
Oh, yeah.
remember it.
People remember it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for joining us today.